How does one describe the last day of school? I suppose I could use the word rapture if it weren't so entwined with a religious phenomenon. I could use orgasm if it wasn't so linked with what would be misconstrued by prudes. So I guess the best word would be carnival. Not that I've ever been to one. I'm just assuming the wild, abandoned glee over not having any more pressing responsibilities pushing in on you, realizing that there are a full 88 days of summer ahead. I never like to be the first one to leave the school on the last day. I like to hang around for a few moments to walk the empty halls with little clumps of dust still tumbling along and discarded papers left to the discretion of the overworked janitor. So by the time I headed home, everyone was pretty well gone, and it wasn't until I got to my front door that I remembered I had forgotten to pick up an English book, which my mother had insisted I bring home because she had paid $11.99 to purchase it because I had misplaced the provided copy. So I had to weigh my options, my mom's anger, or returning to the school I had just gloriously abandoned. I walked back. The door was still open, and as I entered, there was an eerie sensation which crept down my spine at being in this empty edifice of learning, now so silent that you could hear the creaking hinges on the door. I made my way down the hallway to Mr. Marshall's English class, which also, miraculously, was still unlocked. I crept through the door and walked to the storeroom where I knew he kept the books. I gently turned the knob, crossing the fingers on my other hand, hoping that it, too, would be accessible. It was. So I flung the door open in glee, only to discover that in the shadowy confines, not yet lit up by the overhead bulb, was Mr. Marshall, shirt unbuttoned, kissing Miss Crowley, the biology teacher, who had her top off, showing her booba tubas. Now, I developed the name Booba Tubas in an attempt to be unique and humorous, and even though it was silly, I persisted in the terminology, since a cheerleader once giggled upon hearing it. Honestly, folks, in my entire life's journey, I have never seen three people so frozen in time, Mr. Marshall, Miss Crowley, and dumb me peering at one another. No one knew what to do. Finally, Miss Crowley grabbed her blouse to cover up her left tuba and said, "Jonathan, what are you doing here?" I gasped, "I came back to get my book." "You want a book?" she inquired. Apparently my quest for knowledge was more surprising to her than being found in a closet with her paramour. Mr. Marshall disconnected from the human apparatus, put his arm around me, and walked from the room out into the hallway. He stood there looking at me for a long time. I wanted to say something, but everything that popped to my mind seemed dangerous. At length he sighed and said, "Well, Jonathan, we have a situation here." I nodded. "Tell you what I'm going to do," he continued. "I'm going to treat you like an adult. I'm going to believe that you're going to walk out of here with your book and never say another word about what you saw." Leaning in close to my face, he punctuated, "Because if you did, Miss Crowley and I would probably get in a hell of a lot of trouble." I knew he meant what he said, because no teacher would ever use the word hell in front of me unless he felt I was worthy to join him at the local bar for a drink. All I said to him was, "I won't." With this, I took flight out the door, running as fast as my fat legs would carry me. I knew he must have thought he was sunk, but on the way home, I felt so grown up. I was trusted. For the first time in my life, I was to be taken at my word without the threat of punishment. And you know what? I never did tell. Even a month later, when my friends came over to sleep at the house, and we watched chiller theater, and everybody was getting real honest, I bit my lip and the side of my cheek and stuffed a lot of pizza into my mouth to keep from blabbing. When I returned to school that fall, Miss Crowley was gone, and I heard she had gotten married over the summer, but not to Mr. Marshall. The grown-up world is very confusing. I never told anyone until this day, even though I have used memories of Miss Crowley's Boobatubas to stimulate a few sessions in youthful lust.